Hello there. This afternoon we're going to be making some apple strudel. We're using some puff pastry and apples, obviously. So I'm going to show you the pastry in a minute, but first of all we're going to start with the apples. Now there's two ways of doing the apples. First way is you can core the middle with a corer, or you can take an apple, cut it in the middle, cut it down again, and then take your bits out from the middle. Just be careful when you're doing this with young children that with sharp knives, I've said this many times before, you do need to be careful. And then just cut it down. You can keep the peel on, that's absolutely fine, because these are eating apples, so they will cook down quite nicely, and they're sweet, so you won't need any extra sugar with them. And just gently chop down like that and pop them into your bowl. I'm going to show you another way of doing them as well. I'm just going to do this one very quickly. As you can see, it doesn't take very long as you've got a good sharp knife, steady hand, and you know what you're doing, and you're watching what you're doing, talking all the time like I am. So the thing about the chunky bit is it doesn't go too soft when you're wrapping it in the pastry. So we've got that. I did grate one apple before, so you can see the difference between what the grated apple looks like, and that was one grated apple and the chunk. So it's almost twice as much quantity for the same thing. So I personally prefer the chunky approach. However, if you want to, you need a good grater, and you need a bowl that you can really hold on to. But please be careful with little fingers, because we don't want any grated finger in the bowl. So take an apple and you literally go up and down until you get to the core bit, and then you swap it over again. It doesn't take very long, this either. But it doesn't have the same texture, so you actually probably need a lot more apples in your mixture. Almost there. See, it hasn't taken very long and I've still got all my fingers intact. But if I was doing this with children, I'd be watching them like a hawk. I know children love to help in the kitchen, but you do have to be careful with sharp implements, and these are sharp. So it's pretty much done now. Can't get much more apple off that, so that's the end of the apple. And just very gently scrape that down into the bowl. You can get your hand in there as well, or you can put a spoon or something in, just scrape it down. There we go. Okie doke. So you want to get as much of the apple as you can out of there. Pop that away. Just going to quick wash my hands. Remember, always wash your hands before you start working in the kitchen. So we now have our lovely chopped or grated apple. It's quite nice actually. We have a mixture, but so that's your chopped and grated apple. We're then going to add some raisins straight in, and we're going to add some cinnamon, teaspoon of cinnamon. If you don't like cinnamon, you can leave it out. If you don't like the raisins, you can leave it out. If you like nuts, you could add nuts to it. If you like cloves, you could probably add cloves to it. Right, so That is, so you can also add some sugar to that. And the reason you would add sugar is not just to sweeten it, but it will help with some liquid. So it will give you a bit, it will help to break the sugar down and give you some liquid. So we'll put a little bit of sugar in there as well. Yeah. The recipe says 2 tablespoons, so in we go with the 2. And just mix that around a little bit. And then we're going to add a little bit of water as well. The water will help to steam the vegetables when you cook it, steam the fruit while you're cooking it in the pastry. And it also helps to give you a little bit more liquid so it's not too dry. So that was a couple of tablespoons, I think. And so that's now all ready to go into your pastry. Get rid of that. So let's just move a few things out of the way. I always like to have as clean a kitchen as I can have. So you need a baking tin, any size baking tin, and your parchment paper. There will be a piece of parchment paper with your bags. Now, so the simplest and the easiest way to do this is to have a roll of ready roll puff pastry. And you literally unroll it and put that in. So rather than doing that, because that is the simplest and easiest, we're going to make it a little bit more difficult for you. And we've got some puff pastry sheets here, or a block of puff pastry. I'm going to put a little bit of flour down on the board. I always use a board when I'm cooking. I don't like going straight onto the work surface or onto a table or whatever it is. It's so much easier to clean up as well, because you can take the whole thing to the sink rather than having to scrub a work surface. So we've got some puff pastry here, and I'm going to take about half of that piece. And I'm just going to cut it down the middle, like that. Pop it in there, get rid of that. A rolling pin. If you haven't got a rolling pin, you could possibly use a bottle of some sort. And you're just going to roll. I need to put something underneath my board, because the board is moving slightly. So I'm rolling, as I said, straight towards the camera, and then I'm going to turn it to the right, and I'm going to roll again, back and forth, and then I'm going to turn it to the right again. Again, making sure that there's enough flour either on the top of the surface or on the rolling pin. And I'm putting quite a lot of muscle into that to get it as long as I can. Keep turning. I want this to be as thin as I can make it. So even the ready roll, I would roll out a bit more to get it thin. That way the whole thing will cook quicker, but it also means you get a more interesting roll going. So it's beginning to look quite good. Don't worry if the edges are a bit not quite all squared up. That won't matter at all. I think you notice that I'm rolling it and I'm turning it in the same direction all the time. Let's see if I can just get this a little bit thinner. That's lovely. Right, so I'm quite happy with that. Okay, so this is now very nice. Now there are 2 ways of doing this. This is the way I'm going to do it today. So you can do it by putting your apple along one edge, like this, all the way along the edge. In fact, there's a bit too much apple here. And then what you do is you pull it over and you just fold it over like that, and you keep folding. The other way of doing it, so that you've got it so it looks like that, and then you lift that up and put that onto your baking tin. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, just unroll that, is you can you cover the whole thing in the apple, like that. So all the pastry is covered with a small amount of apple. And then you just gradually roll it like a Swiss roll. So very similar, but it means that you get the apple, and hopefully that will seal down. So I'm going to bring this to here. So I might have put a little bit too much liquid in that mixture. And we're going to lift it over like that. Just like that. I'm just going to wipe my board down because it's got some sticky on it and wet. Okay, now the next bit you need to do is you need to egg wash the top. So you take an egg in a bowl, crack it open, whisk it up with a little fork, called egg wash, and into that you put a tiny bit of water as well, and then you can use a pastry brush, or if you really want to get messy, I know the children would like to do this, is you can roll your sleeves up so you don't get your sleeves grubby. And you can literally put it on with your fingers, so you're sort of really don't want too much going on there. Lovely. So that's nice. Beautiful. So that goes in like that. And then we just need to take our sugar again and put a little bit of sugar on the top. So just gently a little bit of the sugar on the top like that. Now that goes in your oven, a nice hot oven, for about 25 minutes until it's beautifully brown. And now I'm going to show you the apple strudel, which is now finished, so we'll have a look at that and see how that's come out. So I think you'll agree that's made quite a big pastry there. And so we could cut a little piece and see what it looks like inside the pastry. This is always the moment of truth. And it gets stuck to the bottom of it. That's why you put it on paper. Let's put some on a plate. And you can just see the layers there, and the apples cooked through beautifully, and the pastry's cooked. And that smells lovely. There's a chunk of apple there, which I think is cooked just enough. Still got a bit of crunch there. So that's your apple strudel, which looks lovely.